Steve Wood. When L. Ron Hubbard died, those present or who knew the actual circumstances, David Miscavige, Sarge Fouth, attorney Earl Cooley, the brokers, etc., must have been presented with an awful problem for Scientology. How could this powerful Thetan just die in such a sad and pathetic way? What to do? That was the question. Presumably, it would be disastrous to announce that their spiritual leader who had discovered the meaning of life just died, and that's that. Had they known the actual circumstances, I'm sure people would run for the doors and an exodus of Scientology would begin. But instead, they were totally complicit in perpetrating an enormous lie. It is now abundantly clear to me and to many others that at this juncture, they were all complicit in creating a story that defies logic. Since if they had told the truth, the true believers would know they had been part of the most unbelievable con ever perpetrated on the world. I don't know if you were in the audience, Chris, or if you have spoken to people who were, but did they all swallow this hook, line, and sinker? I suppose clearly they did, as Scientology still exists to this day. Yet those on that stage knew they were not telling the truth, so therefore must agree that this was all a massive con. What other explanation is there? Well, there's the explanation of the prison of belief. And that belief is not just in L. Ron Hubbard as a man or individual or discoverer or philosopher or researcher, but it's also in this body of knowledge that Hubbard wrote or transcribed or lectured on that is Scientology. That is what you find people who come out of Scientology and become independent Scientologists, some for years. That's what they believe in. They were not Hubbardites, they were Scientologists. And there is a big difference. So you can see that L. Ron Hubbard was a flawed individual. You can see L. Ron Hubbard was a human being. He actually said a few times that he was never anything more than just a human being. And you can excuse any problems, issues, or humanity that L. Ron Hubbard might have demonstrated instead of the godlike state that maybe you think we as Scientologists thought L. Ron Hubbard should have demonstrated. We didn't really think that. I never really thought of L. Ron Hubbard as a deity or godlike or even superhuman in any real way, except for his capacity to get a tremendous amount of work done in a tremendously short period of time. It always amazed me how fast he could write. And how fast he could research something. Now I've come to learn, of course, that he didn't research things, and that's one of the reasons he could produce so much work and make so many conclusive statements about things that are not at all conclusive or not at all evidence-based. When I was in the Scientology mindset, I thought those were conclusive evidence-based things that he was using for his research and for his discoveries. I had implicit faith in the body of the technology of Scientology, more so than in L. Ron Hubbard, the individual. I did think L. Ron Hubbard was this genius, amazing, wonderful guy, but again, not a deity. All right. That's also, I believe, the mindset you're going to find amongst those who were there when L. Ron Hubbard died. They were faced with this problem. You're absolutely right. Here was L. Ron Hubbard's dead body, and how had that come about, and what were the circumstances of it? Well, it was all pretty grim. The brokers and David Miscavige already knew that Hubbard was losing his mind. I mean, there were people who were around who knew that, and they kind of went along with it anyway because they probably justified or rationalized to themselves through the power of belief that Hubbard might have an ethics issue of some kind. I mean, even Hubbard could have that. Anybody could. Or his body was just given out on him, and there wasn't really anything he could do about a body. I mean, once it's going down, it's going down. He couldn't exert his OT powers any more than he already had to keep the thing alive as long as he could. But, bodies die. They're frail things, as L. Ron Hubbard said many times. So, they could have easily rationalized how L. Ron Hubbard as a man could have descended in in his ability and sanity, and yet still, like I said, believed in the tech. So that's kind of how that goes. And that is what the promise and hope that was given to everybody there at the Palladium Auditorium when L. Ron Hubbard's death was announced, was the continuation of L. Ron Hubbard's legacy of the technology. That was what was going to keep going. And in fact, they even were making promises on the stage, Pat Broker's speech, about future OT levels and what L. Ron Hubbard had already finished the work, and it was all there, and it's all good, guys, and we're ready to go, and we can keep delivering. That was message of that event, to acknowledge L. Ron Hubbard, to sort of end cycle, quote unquote, on L. Ron Hubbard, and then proceed forward with his body of work intact and able to be delivered to people so that they could get the gains and, achieve the goals of Scientology. That's what that was all about. So nobody came out of that event at all confused about what was going on or feeling let down, because their personal spiritual immortality was still assured because all the tech was there, and the message of the event, the tech is complete. We've got it all. That was the important part. And remember that really behind the scenes, it was assumed that the work was done and that Pat Broker had access to all of these OT levels in a filing cabinet or two that L. Ron Hubbard had, which Broker now had possession of. And David Miscavige was convinced that Pat Broker had this information, so convinced that he sent a raiding party that Marty Rathbun led to go get those file cabinets and bring them back at any cost. And they took them and stole them from Pat Broker's office or wherever storage area. I think he had them out secreted in some storage area. And they got them back. And sure enough, there was no OT levels in them, at least none that anybody is talking about. And the people who would most be able to tell us about that have spoken about it, and they said there wasn't anything there. So there isn't anything there. There's no there, And that would be the thing that would actually cause Scientologists to turn around and leave and be done with the subject. If they were told OT8 is as far as it goes and there isn't anything else, and there's no hope of ever having anything else because L. Ron Hubbard never wrote anything else. If that message could get across to Scientologists, that would change things. But they're not going to believe it. They're not going to believe anybody outside of the church telling them that, when the people inside the church are telling them that we definitely have OT all the way through 15 done, and we just need you guys to get these organizations expanding and booming and big, and then we'll give them to you, right? That's the promise within the world of Scientology right now, and it has been for decades. So Scientologists are not going to believe anything else than that, because they need to believe that in order to continue being Scientologists. And that's the whole little psychological mind trap that is going on there and has been going on since L. Ron Hubbard died. So there you go.